My name is Charles Hua. I'm the founder and executive director of PowerLines, which is a year-old national energy nonprofit focused on this issue of rising utility bills. Our informal mission is to make utility regulation sexy, so hopefully we'll clear that bar today. And all of this is happening at a time when 80 million Americans are struggling to pay their utility bills. Last year, utilities requested a record $31 billion in rate increases, and electricity and gas have now become the two fastest drivers of inflation in a moment where affordability, cost of living, and pocketbook issues remains top of mind for consumers, for voters, and the public. So that led us to call electricity the new eggs, because suddenly there's a significant amount of attention focused on this issue of rising utility bills from elected officials to political candidates of Democratic and Republican stripes and across the country. There's a reason why folks say that utility bills are one of their top two most frustrating expenses. You might think, oh, it's just a couple percentage of my income. It's not that big of a deal. But for a lot of folks, this represents a significant chunk of their expenditures, sometimes up to 10% of their income, if not higher, spent just to pay their electric bills. And if you look at your average utility bill, raise your hand if you've looked at your utility bill over the last month. Raise your hand if you understand what's going into all of that. And that's the issue, because consumers don't have a choice. They see their bills change so much month to month. They ultimately feel powerless over these costs. And again, a lot of that ultimately is causing folks, Democrats, Republicans, and independents, to feel concerned and distrust ultimately the state government officials that actually have the power to do something about this. So who are those folks? Well, these are public utilities commissions. There are 200 of these commissioners across the country, and they oversee basically how much you pay for your energy. So there's about 200 of them, and they control and oversee more than $200 billion a year in utility spending. So PowerLines is focused on advocacy and engaging directly with these regulatory bodies. Here's 5 of them, just to give you a flavor for what these public utilities commissions often look like. This is in Louisiana, where they were pledging allegiance to the flag of one of the commissioners at one of their latest meetings. As you can imagine, and this was not taken in 1993, this was taken last year, a lot of these commissions are outdated, they're not innovative, they don't embrace modern energy technologies, they're very much behind in terms of adopting innovative grid solutions. So PowerLines, we started it about a year ago to really tackle this issue of making sure that that this niche ecosystem of these public utilities commissioners, that there was sufficient focus from the advocacy space. We've been really fortunate to build a robust bipartisan advisory board consisting of academics, former utility commissioners, think tanks, and investors and developers. And we're looking to quickly scale our impact. And I'll just close with this. We were in New Orleans last year for Team Retreat, and our Uber driver is a restaurant manager. His wife is a school teacher, and he drove Ubers for extra income. And unprompted, I didn't expose that I worked in utility regulation, but he said that the #1 reason why he had to move out of his childhood home recently was because he couldn't afford his utility bills. And that changed so much month to month. In Louisiana's case, largely due to natural gas. And I share that because in the wealthiest country in the world, in the most energy-rich country in the world, it's unfathomable that 80 million Americans can't afford their utility bills, trading off food, education, healthcare, keeping their homes at unsafe and unhealthy temperatures just to keep their lights on. And this is very much an inflection point where demand is rising for electricity due to AI, manufacturing, EVs, heat pumps, and the decisions that PUCs allow over the next 5 years will ultimately shape not just how the US grows and builds its energy transition, but also how the rest of the world looks at what the US is doing to meet rising demand. So we're really eager to tackle this issue, and reach out to charles@powerlines.org if you have any questions.